my name is Beck and welcome to a video where I talk about some dark coloured covers. Yes, you can tell that I am low on video ideas. I'm doing a top 5 Wednesday, which is a Goodreads group with a whole lot of prompts. There's also 7 on Sunday, which I'm going to dip my toe into as well, so stay tuned. But for the dark covers, I have a list that is going to suit the Halloween aesthetic. I've very much tried to suit that myself, even though I'm wearing green. I have a pumpkin here, so I thought I'd get into kind of the zone of Halloween and recommend some dark book covers. So the first on my list is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and this is an adult urban fantasy series set at Yale University, and it follows a girl, or I guess a woman, named Alex, and Alex Stern is going to Yale, but she also can see ghosts and has been able to for her entire life. And so that's where the kind of spookiness and the darkness of the front cover comes in, because this is kind of cult-like in the sense that at Yale there are secret societies, and those secret societies literally practice magic. And so Alex is roped into kind of mediating all of that with Darlington, a secondary character, and he has been doing this for a long time. It's like a family tradition, I suppose, for him, whereas Alex has just been lumped in with him. So he knows what he's doing, Alex doesn't. So you get to see this like underground secret society of Yale and the magic alongside it, as well as understanding or getting to know Alex and her capacity to see and interact with ghosts and her trauma stemming from that, because there is, I don't know when in the book it is, but you should be aware if you want to pick up this adult work by Leigh Bardugo that there is a sexual assault scene in here, and it can be quite confronting. So if you're reading the physical book like me, I just kind of skim read it and skipped over it, but if you're listening to the audiobook, it might creep up on you. So pardon the creep pun, given that it's Halloween, but just be aware of that going in, otherwise you might get a little bit of a nasty surprise. But I loved the book Ninth House, and I think it is perfect for the spooky season. We've also got The Hunger Games, which is one that a lot of people know. I have the green kind of camo colours of these books, but the editions that I read when I first got into The Hunger Games are the black editions with the Mockingjay pin on them. So Hunger Games definitely came to mind when I was trawling through my Goodreads list. I was looking for it specifically. So even though it doesn't necessarily fit the Halloween vibe with the spooky supernatural stuff, it definitely fits with the whole aesthetic. Something that does fit with the Halloween theme and aesthetic both together is the dark cover of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is a book that a lot of people know and love. I don't really like classics, and I had to read this for school, which is kind of a double whammy for the key ingredients for somebody to hate a book. So conceptually, I generally like the concept of it, but I hated the execution. There were so many sentences in here that just felt very overwritten. I just did not like it. But also reading it as a 16-year-old, I would not recommend unless classics are your thing, because I know they're not my thing, and I was forced to read it at a young age for school, so that only doubled down on my hate for it. So the cover that I'm thinking of too, while it is black, it also has a mostly naked monster on it. So then we have Milk and Honey, which is a poetry collection, and I think I gave this 3 stars back in the day. I read it a few years ago, so it wasn't that long ago, but it's kind of another book that I am looking back on, and at the time I romanticized it because it felt new age and kind of edgy, but in a good way. It talked about identity and feminism, and I guess just emotion and growth and interacting with the world. Now I look at it and I'm like, oh, it feels a bit try hard. It's kind of something you'd reblog on Tumblr rather than what I'd expect to read as a poetry collection, but I also don't read a lot of poetry, so it might be indicative of some modern poetry that I'm not aware of. So I'll probably give it like a 2 stars now instead of a 3. And Ember in the Ashes is another dark cover, and I just remember it being really black and then having those beautiful flame kind of images, embers I suppose. I was trying to avoid saying embers again, but they're definitely embers. I liked this Roman-inspired young adult fantasy series, and I would encourage you to read it if you like I guess they're enemies to lovers, I suppose, because they're on different warring sides. And when you join the kind of Roman magical school, because they're training gladiators basically, when you see through the character Elias, and it's his perspective. He's trying to train to be a warrior. They have these masks that meld with their face when they say their oaths, and his isn't mixing with his face because he doesn't really believe in the ideology as strongly as other people. So it's an interesting look at his character, that it's not gelling together. And then I can't remember the female character's name, but she is a rebel. I think she's a victim of something and she has losses, and she goes in there to spy, I think, and comes across him. So she goes in there as a slave girl, that's her pretense, and she's doing it to either enact or side with a rebellion because she needs something from them. So that's how they get mixed up together. It's very been inspired, which I generally like, and I enjoyed the world building for what it was. It's a young adult fantasy, so I got through it super duper quickly. Now something a little bit more spooky, because it is about zombies, and that is The Enemy by Charlie Higson. This is I think it's either a middle grade, no, it wouldn't be middle grade. It wouldn't be middle grade, it would be young adult. And I believe it's a apocalyptic book about kids who, when they turn 13, I think, they turn more easily from the zombie virus, or everyone 13 and over has turned. So it's a matter of your age hitting a certain point and then you just turning, because the zombie virus is a thing, like it's in the air. I don't know. I don't know enough about it to actually describe too much, but I know that the execution of the writing style felt dry to me rather than engaging. And when I read a apocalyptic book, I expect it to just kind of grab me. And if the characters aren't strong enough for me to empathize with in an apocalypse, I'm probably not going to care too much. And I just enjoyed this one. I gave it 3.5 stars, I think. I'm not sure. I think I tried to continue reading the series, but in the end, I just couldn't be bothered. And that really tells you enough about the series. It was okay. And like any zombie media, I will give it a go, because that is the one spooky thing that I will keep coming back to. I love zombies. I just love zombie apocalypse stuff. I think it strengthens characters, but when you get the more poorer put together ones, the cracks really show, because you want your characters to be really strong. So if I'm going to love the characters, you're guaranteed I'm going to love your zombie apocalypse story. Another couple that I didn't love necessarily, but I read a long time ago now. You can tell I was trawling through my Goodreads because I don't have my bookshelf set up yet. I'm in my new house and everything is very slow. Slow but worthwhile. The next one on here that I wanted to talk about really quickly is Three Dark Crowns by Kendare Blake. Either way, it's a young adult fantasy about three women who live in a matriarchal fantasy society, and every span of particular years, these queens have to fight to the death. So they've got to fight their own sisters to gain the throne and the crown. So it's already messed up when you start, and it's kind of got that survival aspect that you might expect from a zombie apocalypse, because everyone is kind of out for themselves and it's clan versus clan, and each clan has their own magical propensity, I suppose. So I liked that general world building aspect of it, and it seemed spooky enough, like there were spooky creatures in there and the cover's dark. So I guess as far as Halloween goes, it's definitely fitting, but it's not one that I'm going to reread. Another one I'm not going to reread, even though I enjoyed the Lunar Chronicles by this author, which are fairy tale retellings in a sci-fi world, which I'm not usually into fairy tale retellings, but I digress. I'm talking about Heartless here because it's got that beautiful black cover with the whole red foils on it. I read this back in the day when it initially came out and there was massive hype for it. And given that I don't really read fairy tales, I was like, am I going to like this? And it turned out that, I liked it enough, but I thought it would do a bit of a different spin than what actually occurred. I'm not going to say too much more. It has a black cover or a dark cover. It fits this kind of general video theme, but in terms of fantasy elements, if you're hungry, it will definitely suit you because there's a lot of lemon curd in this. So I just wanted like lemon curd and lemon tarts. So good. But I couldn't tell you that it's spooky. Then we've got two very drastically different books. One of them is Norse mythology, and that naturally retells all of the Norse myths by the legendary Stephen Fry. And then after that, I've also got a black cover that has a fluorescent pink spine. So it matches the actual aesthetic with the cover, but not so much if it's on your bookshelf with the spine facing out, and that is The Hate You Give. At least the Australian paperback doesn't have all black. This one is about Star, and it's also centering on police brutality in that they initially at the beginning of the book murder a black teenager, and then it chronicles Star's life because that was one of her close friends, and how she interacts and reacts with the organizations, her family, her friends around her. And it's a really beautifully woven story in that it incites the correct amount of rage, and it tries to fight for justice, and it encourages young adults to fight for activism, which I loved. So it is definitely one that I would highly recommend. Even though it's pink, just face it outwards on your bookshelf and you'll be fine. Now this next one, was the first audiobook that I ever listened to, and my goodness, it was an undertaking. I don't know why I decided to do this when in the past I don't actually love this author, even though I have really tried to, and that is Neil Gaiman, and the book is American Gods. It's spooky in the sense that there are obviously gods in the story, and kind of that element of supernatural and uncanniness, but I didn't like it, or I gave it 3, but in retrospect, I'd probably give it less. The writing style felt slow, even though it was incredibly descriptive, and the timeline just felt like it was really dragging. But I was also listening to it on my commutes to and from work when I caught the train at the time, and I might have just been wanting the journey home to go faster. So I don't know, maybe it's partly my mood at the time, but I read that more than 4 or 5 years ago now. I don't plan on rereading it. It is foiled, so at least it's nice and shiny, and it has that black cover too. Then we have another book that also has a different coloured spine. So again, just face it forwards on your bookshelf, but you will love facing it forward because it's got such a beautiful cover, and that is Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. This is a sci-fi story, an adult sci-fi story, and it's about these robot parts that start appearing on different continents. And these robot parts are colossal in size. And when she was a little girl, Rose, I think that's her name, Rose, she was playing in a park, and she was playing, riding a bike, and then she fell into this massive hole, and inside that hole was a giant robotic hand. So she fell into the palm of this hand, and then flash forward to when she's an adult, she's a doctor or a scientist of some kind. She's got a doctorate regardless. And she's investigating what these alloys are and what these kind of machine-like things are. And it's very much a first contact with aliens story with science alongside it. And I loved the audiobook because you got all the different characters' voices narrated by different people. So it felt very tangible, like you could definitely pick out pieces of who was who, and it was really interactive that way, at least I felt. So if you're gonna do that book, do it on audio, because it's also told in mostly interviews and talking. So that only adds to the fact that the audiobook is the very best narrative for it, because you want it to deliver the way it's supposed to, and just reading it you kind of lose something. It's kind of like reading Shakespeare, I suppose. It's a play, it's supposed to be performed. So because it's all written in interview form, characters are talking, so it's supposed to be told to you. Now, only 2 left because I wanted to wrap this up. It is the next one, and I remember this as the spooky book that I had to get through while I was doing a temporary reception job to save up money so I could travel to Japan. It has a very distinct point in my mind because I remember walking out of that temp job, listening to It by Stephen King, waiting for the elevator. I hadn't even pressed the button and nobody else was around, and the elevator opened, and I was like, I'm going to take the stairs. This is too creepy. I don't want this clown to kill me when I'm going to take the elevator downstairs. That's definitely a very spooky book. And then the last one on here, because it is dark covers, I decided to end on a banger. That is Dark Dawn. Even though I've now, on reflection, given this book 2 stars, because this author and his writing style has very much gone downhill for me. I still absolutely adore the art of Kirby. I think Kirby is his name. He's done the illustrated versions of the UK covers for Nevernight Godsgrave and Dark Dawn. Love them so much, and I still check in on his Instagram because his art is incredible. That is the only reason that this cover came to mind, because of his art style and the fact that the cover has yellow on it and white, but it's got obviously dark on the back, and it's called Dark Dawn. So that is it. If you have any other dark covered books that maybe have a bright coloured spine, let me know. I only really can think of Sleeping Giants and The Hate You Give, so Thug. I don't know any offhand, so please let me know because I would like to make my bookshelf look nice and colourful. But thank you so much for watching this video. Have a lovely spooky Halloween, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.